So we're here at RSA, and coming out to San Francisco 2024, and we're just coming off of a couple weeks after Attack's latest release. And so it's been a very busy April and May now. And so we just released on April 23rd, Attack version 15. Happens to have been released on English Muffin Day, very critical. And thrilled to talk with some folks on things that are in the latest release. And so go around, sort of introduce the group. I'm Adam Pennington. I'm the lead on MITRE ATT&CK.
Jamie Williams, a lead for Attack for Enterprise, so behind the scenes writing techniques, and we'll turn it over to you folks.
Well, hey, goodness. Thank you, everyone. Look, I'm John Hammond. I'm a principal security researcher over at Huntress, but super happy to be here. Excited to chat.
I'm Greg Ake. I'm at Huntress as well, and I'm on the detection team.
Yeah, and so some of the reason why we're interested in chatting is that, Attack does biannual releases. We come out with new versions every 6 months. And because Attack is trying to describe the things that adversaries are doing, not every time we put out Attack are we putting out new features that are sort of breaking everyone's products or changing the way things work. But we're also doing a lot of work getting into some of the deeper content and keeping up with the actions that adversaries are doing. And so we were thinking we were going to chat about some, what's been going on lately, what's been added to Attack.
Well, hey, I'll be the first to admit, I'm maybe following my sword a little bit, but I have not quite yet taken a look at all the new features and hotness that's in the latest release. So if you wouldn't mind maybe spilling the tea, I'm fascinated to see what's the latest.
Just break my heart right in front of me.
I know. I'm sorry. Falling on my sword here. But
So there's actually, funny enough about Adam's story about breaking, like post-sub techniques, we've really reached this like time of peace where we're really just kind of sprinkling in new little like amendments here and there. So by and large, not too much crazy, but we're really excited in terms of looking at the adversary space and threat landscape and really taking a look at, obviously it's pretty clear when you see new TTPs, you're like, oh, I've never thought about that persistence or that execution's really interesting. But a lot of what we're adding is like, what does like security look like for real practitioners? Like not just like, the traditional attack, like, oh, let's like, be very brittle and not add new stuff, but like thinking about like financial theft and like AI tools and things like that may, or even one of my favorite ones we added last year actually was impersonation. Of like thinking about like, what are real humans behind keyboards thinking about and trying to defend? So, I don't have, it's only been a couple weeks. I don't have the TIDs memorized yet. Sorry about that. But a couple spicy ones I want to call out is we added in Pre, so if you're familiar with that platform, the idea of breaching network devices, not to reside on that device, but more to pivot to other devices. Thinking about, APT28 and all those like residential proxy things we're seeing. So not going to get too far in the weeds, but I think a question for you is like, when you think about like, especially in your space, when you think about like the big hard challenges, like obviously Attack, we're here to help. But what are the big kind of trends or things that you're seeing that, from the bottom up, defenders are really struggling with? Because that's really what we're trying to meet you in the middle on.
Yeah, that's a good question. And you come at it from both ends. I think as a defender on the detection team, there's the balance between what's the latest trend, what's the newest emerging threat. But by and large, I think from our visibility and the people we're talking to, it's really correlation of the techniques across attack chains and really understanding the relationships. A lot of people really want to hyper-focus on, I want to get all of these tactics covered, and they're sort of like doing the crossword puzzle of like this tactic technique and then sort of forgetting that there's a lot of procedures and variants and permutation there. So we really try to focus on areas about correlation and what are primary detections and secondary detections that sort of provide additional context to that first one. So building correlation and understanding sort of the attack chains, is really huge. And I think a lot of people, when they get into their triage phase, are really missing that planning and preparedness, right? They're focusing too much on, I'm just going to triage this technique, and forgetting that is a part of a chain and a series of goals.
I love that because we kind of have the same philosophy. Is we're not going to add a TID that's going to like rule all and like this solves cyber. Like, congratulations, everyone. Like, this is the one to focus on. Where really attack is like a dictionary. It's just a bunch of words, and like no particular word is more important. And to your point, like thinking about it from a defender's perspective, you're not going to defend every word. You're not even going to learn every word. You don't even care. Like, I can learn an entire language and be fluid and know like, 10% of the dictionary. So more importantly, we're trying to enable folks like you to, exactly to your point, tell a story. Yeah. What are you seeing? But more importantly, what about you're seeing is most important. We're going to like put resources toward versus like, oh, this is kind of like, you said a good correlation, maybe a step in the right direction, but let's not really worry about that.
Yeah, absolutely. A terminology coming from a military background, I use the terminology in our team of a fatal funnel. And the concept is you never want to be in the entryway when you're breaching a building, because that's where it's fatal. And depending if you look at a novice script kiddie to an advanced threat, they're going to have to touch a system in the same way. It might be, of course, various degrees or gray area of sophistication and capability. But if you really focus on those primary detections on those fatal funnels of where adversaries have to go, you can start to look at MITRE and sort of supplement around those, like sort of making a minefield around those ones. So when you start to triage that host, you see like, hey, something obvious that looks suspicious happened, but then all the context around all of those other TIDs that are lined up right after that sequentially, you can show it to a junior analyst and say, do you think this machine's compromised? And they're like, yes. And without looking at it in that lens, they usually go into like an incident response process, and they're spending a lot of time that they don't need to, that they could triage. And that's, I think, what we try to do for our team, because if I don't do a good job as a detection engineer, I hear about it pretty quickly from first our SOC, then the customers.
And I think that aligns with what John said earlier, or what John didn't say earlier, is like, there really is no point for like, attack does release. You don't need to go memorize every new technique and like, oh, what's this new stuff? But to your point, like, when it hits you in the face, learn it. Yes. Like when I see an alert for that, or when I actually see it, I'm like, what is this concept? Like, you're never gonna like top to bottom and attack, like memorize all this crap. Like, no, actually, like you tell your story, see your reality, and then let attack kind of like be your co-pilot. I know MITRE's real big on aviation puns, so like, there we go.
Yeah. I mean, when I talk to people who say, I want to get into detection engineering, I'm like, pull up MITRE, don't memorize it, and get Atomic Red Team and set up a few VMs and start playing around and just start to get comfortable with what the data looks like. And then, play around with the data. And you can relatively quickly make a really good content set, custom rules that will identify a lot of, nefarious things that a business would want in their network.
And for what it's worth, people hate that answer because they're like, oh, what part of attack is the most important? I'm like, what are you already doing? Yes. Like, show me your stuff, and then I'll show you how attack kind of like helps paint that picture a little clearer.
Man, if we had more time, something that, using the term grinds my gears is when people say like, well, you didn't cover this attack technique. And it's like, does it matter? We detect it further on down the attack chain. We're focusing on points, those fatal funnels in the attack chain where we know we're good. We know our technology, we know our capability, we know our visibility, and we know our gaps. And unfortunately, a lot of people like to overlook the foundational things of patch management, app auditing, my visibility, what telemetry I have. And once you have a good coverage and understanding of that, you throw MITRE on top and you're cooking with grease right then, right?
So I want to say this and see Adam's reaction as I say the words. I'll hand you the mic, but what about 100% coverage?
Ooh, that is exactly where I was going to go, Jamie. I'm hearing something that doesn't quite sound like 100% coverage being the goal here. I'm hearing focus and prioritization, but what everyone's telling me and what I'm seeing in some of the booths downstairs is 100% attack coverage. And so do you think that's not a worthy goal?
I mean, I'll guess I'll go down for this one. It's impractical. It's impossible. If you had 100% coverage on an endpoint, that machine would be unusable. There's over 11,000 unique permutations identified in MITRE, and those are the known ones that people shared with you, and that's been documented. Does the vendor have over 12,000 detections that detect all those permutations? I mean, that's just...
And we're completely there with you. I mean, so we've been out trying to preach over the past year, trying to get people to look a little bit more at, what does attack coverage mean? Why is it that you're looking at particular areas? And exactly some of what you're saying. Some of what's in attack, you really don't want to write a detection for. It's not, we are trying to describe things that adversaries are doing without prejudice. We're not saying that every single thing in attack is something that you want to get out there and put in your seam, have a big flashing siren that goes off in the SOC as soon as it's seen. You will hate us if you try doing that. And some people definitely have, and they do. And we see it as actually one of the biggest failures, where people start to try to use attack and then decide it's too much.
Yeah,
That, focusing on sort of those specific areas.
I mean, my hot take on it is, if you want 100% coverage, you like for alert fatigue. Don't complain about alert fatigue if you want 100% coverage. You have to find the balance. Your business, you have to know your risk. You have to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then fill the gaps appropriately to what you're trying to accomplish. And maybe, it's hard for technical people to step away from technical solutions and look at the business, and the business needs to make money, and we need to support that. And it doesn't usually get supported with 100% coverage of anything. It's impractical.
I kind of hate how hot of a take that is, because it makes absolute sense. But to your point, like, if you walk around and just say that, you're going to fall on a lot of people that are going to push back. But
That's fine.
Love that philosophy.
Yeah, it works for us. And, 60% of my time is spent triaging existing content. How big do you want your detection team? How much are you going to invest in that? If you want 100% coverage, hire a 40-person detection team. Sure, you could probably get there in a couple of years. Have fun.
And so, John, do you have any hot takes on sort of tips for using attack, or specific things you guys are doing with it?
Oh, I don't know if I have such a hot and spicy take, but if I maybe water us down a little bit, I know. Look, we're hunting across like millions of endpoints and entities, and I think we tag these in either a association with MITRE and attack framework, whether it's the tactic, whether it's the technique, sub procedure, etc. If even just for like the contextual awareness and enrichment for ourselves, like for our internal usage, because I'm thinking, look, as we discussed, like that's like 12,000 or whatever pieces of info that we can kind of tie to that. But if I consider that, look, that's just a puzzle piece, that's one of many, and however big this puzzle is, it's kind of fun to put those together and even use them as a springboard to not just one investigation or one case. Let me zoom out a little bit and see, look, does this puzzle piece fit into any other puzzle? Can this apply elsewhere across all of our partner base and telemetry? And for anything that I think really helps with just getting our head straight on for the mission that we're trying to even follow through with here. So I got to say my hat's off and kudos to you all, especially for a new release, everything that you're up to. It's always great to see us really moving the needle the best that we can. So thank you.
Well, and so I'm always a little bit jealous, though, talking to people that have some of that intelligence coming in.
No.
And so we are very reliant upon the community and the people that have that kind of visibility to tell us what's going on, whether it's out through public reporting, and using those sources to add material to attack, people that are tapping us on the shoulder and saying that, hey, we're seeing these bad guys do this thing over here that you're missing. Yeah. And we're always thankful to the parts of the community that have that kind of visibility and are helping us out with attack.
Yeah, I just wanted to co-sign and foot stomp that. Like, appreciate the kudos. It's a lot of work. We love it, though. And exactly as Adam said, like, we don't produce actually anything net new. We're just really telling your own story back to you. And just like, hey, like, we're seeing what we're doing and kind of doing a little bit of aggregation, a little bit of like, massaging here and there, but we're just feeding you back your own reality. So exactly as Adam said, it's a shared community and a shared outcome and hopefully shared success.
Yeah, just the boom mic there. But sharing the love, man. The time that saves defenders and us doing research is immense. If we had to collate that information and do the little work that you say you're doing, it would be a nightmare for the rest of us. So like building a standard, maintaining a standard, and having a place to go to research, helping the noobs to the senior make sense of what's going on out there is invaluable. So thank you.
Well, and helping the noobs has sort of been another theme for us over the past year. And one of the things we've noticed is that we sometimes see smaller organizations struggling to digest attack or be able to implement it into their organization. That there's so much stuff there, there's so many techniques and sub-techniques and, as you say, a lot of procedures, that just going from that into defenses, for a large organization that has a well-resourced team, they're often in a good place to do that. But, sort of your medium businesses aren't necessarily. It's a space that you guys know pretty well. And so, a lot of the work we've been trying to do is make the defensive material that's in attack a bit more accessible. It's like some of the stuff we just did with 15 is getting a lot more material in there with analytics. So MITRE for years and under attack has had a repository called the Cyber Analytic Repository, or CAR, where we put out pseudo analytics. It's actually older than attack, believe it or not. It's been out in public since about a year before attack was, but it's gotten itself closer and closer to attack. And so we've been integrating those analytics in, trying to make them simpler language, stuff that defenders can more easily copy paste directly in, and getting advice that those less resourced defenders can just take and directly use in their material.
Yeah.
So I know we have to sign off here, but just a hot take from our side. One of the things that we've taken to heart is like an internal philosophy is do less better. So it's great to hear that, like, I think it aligns with your philosophy is like, let's see what we see, know what we know, and handle it. Like, we're not going to secure anything. We're not going to solve anything, but like that 60%, that's more than enough for a lifetime. But we really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. Always a pleasure. I don't have a clean like radio sign off, so cheers.
Persistence, privilege escalation, and lateral movement is where I'd start. Maybe that's a good takeaway.
The homework.